I want to make something very, 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 very clear because there seems to be a little bit of confusion on what we mean sometimes when we say on behalf of, right? There's really two types of on behalf of flows. There's delegation and there's impersonation. At no point in any time do you want an agentic agent to impersonate a human being. That's not what we're doing here. What we're saying is that this agent is acting on behalf of a human being to do something small. And that's kind of what Andy was mentioning when he said like OBO and delegated access flows. When we say OBO during this demo, at no point are we talking about impersonation. We are only talking about specifically the agentic agent working on behalf of somebody with delegated access. This person has approved the agentic agent to do this kind of thing. Okay, and we're going to see that here in action. So the first thing I need to do is sign in, and I'm not going to take you through all the sign up and sign in and passkey registration stuff because most of us know what that looks like, right? So I'm just going to log in with the passkey. You can see that I'm a federated user. This is really me. This is my IBM identity, and what I can actually do here is look at my access token. And just to keep it at a super high level, what's important here are two different things. One, I have already approved this agentic agent to work on my behalf. Thus, one of my scopes is agentic, and that allows us to do all kinds of policy stuff in the back end, you know, with how much the agentic agent's allowed to maybe transfer or the things that agentic agent's allowed to do by default, right? Without that, I wouldn't be able to even log into the agentic AI agent. I would be redirected and saying, hey, I need to get your consent to allow this agent to work on your behalf. But because I've already allowed this agent to work on my behalf, I have this, and we have this specific field in the access token within verify to say what can act on my behalf, and this is just the unique ID of the agent that was spun up. So only this agent and only this instance of this agent can act on my behalf, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over to the agentic agent and do something simple. So get user data. The first thing that it's going to do, and we'll see here in the agent log, that it's going to do all kinds of things. So it needs to authenticate to HashiVault, needs to authenticate to verify, it needs to have access in both places. It needs to be able to have access to the specific dynamic secrets in HashiVault to check those out and use them to do all kinds of things like get its own access token, to actually exchange its token for a new one, which is what we're seeing it do here. And that is our delegated access token. That is what is saying that agent can specifically act on my behalf to go and do something. And then we just get the MCP call back with is just a bunch of data, and then the LLM transfers that data into something that's reasonable for the human. But what's important here specifically is that agent was authorized to act on my behalf. It got a limited scoped access token for a specific purpose. Policies were implemented on the back end, triggered, and everything else, and then it returned the data as appropriate. So one of the things that we might want, and a lot of things that we are seeing customers want and people want in the real world, is human in the loop, right? These are with your SIBA flows, these are with your email OTPs, and I've set one of those up here just as an example, so I can say, hey, I want to transfer $200 from one account to another. Now that could be considered a high risk transaction. If it's over a certain threshold, we could flag it and trigger SIBA or human in the loop flows. If it's not, then maybe we just allow it by default depending on the user's access. It really just depends on what you want to do. But the point here is if I say transfer 300 from my savings to my checking accounts, the agent probably wants to make sure that I am who I say I am before they actually trigger the flow. So if I send this, then it's going to tell me, okay, it needs the account ID. So I'm going to say account 104 to 103, and then it's going to say, boom, all this other stuff starts kicking off. So it recognizes it needs to call the tool, it needs to get more secrets from Vault, and now it's sent a request to my authenticator, and it's waiting for my approval, which is on my actual work phone, so I'm not going to show that. Authorize, and I'm seeing authorized AI agent to transfer $200 from checkings or from savings to checking account. I'm going to approve that, and you're going to see the SIBA has been approved because we're done with polling. And now that that's done, the transfers actually happen, and all of that happened on the back end for the agent to validate what it can and cannot do with policies being implemented. Now, on the more important thing here, if I go to demos, USC. I'm going to go to the admin side. So we're tracking all of this on the back end. Which agents are acting on behalf of which users at which time for what reasons and what accesses and policies are being implemented all in the back. right? So we're tracking all of this data and we can send it to SOARs, we can send it to SIMs, we can send it to whatever the heck we need to automatically take action. Even partially, we've validated this with a shared signals framework, as you can see here, where something super risky, like I say, hey, I want to access Andy's account instead of my own, that might be a super high risk, like someone's trying to use this token for something it's not supposed to be used for. That's going to be flagged as malicious, and we can use the shared signals framework to actually revoke that token, rotate it, and lock out that user session as an example. But more importantly here, my lord, do we have a bunch of authentication requests? Nope, not the MCP server. This is actually what I'm looking for. So I have me. This is agentic AI demo to agentic AI demo. This is actually the introspection. This is the issuance. This it keeps popping up the wrong one. This one. It says SSO event. It's not an SSO event. Yeah, load different data, and then we're going to load that data back. There we go. That's actually what I'm looking for. So it isn't a SSO event, but it's me. It's my username. I just simply log into this. You can see the granted scope that we had. This is the token that had the May Act in there, and of course we introspected that token in the demo to validate audiences and everything like that. This is the agentic agent itself logging in to validate that, hey, I'm supposed to be here. And what you're going to see is that there are no scopes. It has no scopes by default because it doesn't need any scopes by default. It just says, hey, or it might need, depending on your agent, but this specific agent doesn't need any scopes by default because it doesn't need access to anything yet. It just says, hey, I'm supposed to be here. You know who I am. I've authenticated the vault. I also have a vault token, and I'm waiting to use both depending on what the user requests. Then we have this token exchange, and this token exchange occurs on my behalf, and the agentic AI agent's in here, and it requested these specific scopes. Now, this is kind of a debug bunk all scopes. We can scope it down, we can scope it up, we can apply policy, we don't have to apply policy. The world's your oyster at this point. The fact of the matter is that we can see that this agent worked on my behalf to do these specific things. Then that was passed to the MCP server and it was introspected. It was passed to the API endpoint and that was also introspected. And that's of course checking for all of your super nerdy token stuff like your audiences and your scopes and making sure that this user actually exists in this application. The other stuff that APIs and MCP servers typically do, right? So start to finish here, we are monitoring what agents are doing what things on which user's behalf, and more importantly, we have these contextual informations with this data to say, is this normal? Is this high risk? This is a transaction, as an example, for this amount. And we can write policies and do whatever we need to make sure that anything that's high risk gets secured appropriately, and that's becoming even more important with things like the open banking standard. But start to finish, this is how we monitor and track with Vault and verify which agentic AI agents are doing what on whose behalf. Machine to machine is a little bit different. That's a lot more towards the Vault side to spin up, spin down, and everything else like that. But this specifically on behalf of flows is really the tricky part, because if you're not doing proper delegation of access, it all falls apart. So start to finish, yeah, that's our agentic AI demo.